We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. Never before has knowledge been so readily available at our fingertips. Yet, paradoxically, we also find ourselves in an era marked by a decline in intellectual rigor and critical thinking. A creeping superficiality permeates our institutions, our discourse, and our daily lives. This essay is a call to arms, an urgent plea to recognize and address this dangerous trend. We must confront the dumbing down of society and reclaim the lost values of integrity, knowledge, and wisdom. Our current trajectory is unsustainable. We are witnessing the erosion of intellectual standards, the rise of misinformation, and the decline of rational discourse. This trend threatens the very foundations of our civilization. It undermines our ability to make sound judgments, solve complex problems, and build a future worthy of our potential. The consequences are already being felt across various sectors of society, from education and media to politics and business. Consider, for instance, the proliferation of fake news and the rise of echo chambers on social media. These phenomena reflect a disturbing trend, a preference for comfortable narratives over uncomfortable truths, for easy answers over nuanced understanding. This intellectual laziness, this aversion to grappling with complexity, is a dangerous form of self-soothing. It leaves us vulnerable to manipulation, susceptible to demagoguery, and incapable of addressing the multifaceted challenges of our time. This essay seeks to explore the roots of this intellectual decline and to propose a path forward. We must examine the ways in which our institutions have contributed to this trend. We must identify the cultural forces that have fueled it. And most importantly, we must articulate a vision for a future where knowledge, integrity, and wisdom are once again valued and cultivated. The task before us is daunting, but the stakes are too high to ignore. The future of our civilization hinges on our ability to reclaim our minds and rebuild a society that values truth, reason, and the pursuit of knowledge. Education, once considered the bedrock of a thriving society, now finds itself grappling with the same forces of intellectual decline. The pursuit of knowledge for its own sake is increasingly overshadowed by a focus on metrics, rankings, and vocational training. This shift in priorities has led to a devaluation of the humanities, a decline in critical thinking skills, and a growing emphasis on rote learning over genuine understanding. Universities, once bastions of intellectual exploration, are increasingly beholden to corporate interests and political agendas. The pressure to secure funding and maintain rankings often trumps the pursuit of academic excellence. This compromises the integrity of research, limits academic freedom, and stifles the spirit of intellectual inquiry. Students caught in this system are often treated as consumers rather than learners, encouraged to acquire credentials rather than cultivate a love of learning. The consequences of this shift are far-reaching. Graduates enter the workforce ill-equipped to navigate the complexities of the modern world. They lack the critical thinking skills necessary to discern truth from falsehood, to analyze information effectively, and to formulate well-reasoned arguments. This deficiency has a ripple effect, impacting not only individual careers, but also the broader societal discourse. A citizenry deprived of the tools of critical thinking is susceptible to manipulation, prone to making poor decisions, and ill-prepared to engage in meaningful democratic participation. The media landscape, once a diverse ecosystem of information sources, has become increasingly fragmented and polarized. The rise of social media has created echo chambers where individuals are exposed only to information that confirms their existing biases. This phenomenon, coupled with the proliferation of fake news and misinformation, has eroded public trust in traditional media outlets and created a breeding ground for conspiracy theories and extremist ideologies. The 24/7 news cycle, fueled by the insatiable appetite for sensationalism, prioritizes speed over accuracy, clickbait headlines over in-depth reporting. This emphasis on superficiality has led to a decline in journalistic standards, a blurring of the lines between news and entertainment, and a general dumbing down of public discourse. Citizens, bombarded with a constant stream of often contradictory information, find it increasingly difficult to discern truth from falsehood, to separate fact from opinion, and to form informed opinions. The consequences of this media landscape are profound. The erosion of trust in reliable sources of information undermines the very fabric of a functioning democracy. It fuels political polarization, fosters social divisions, and creates an environment where rational debate and informed decision-making become increasingly difficult. The echo chambers of social media, while offering a sense of community and belonging, often trap individuals in a self-reinforcing cycle of misinformation, further isolating them from alternative viewpoints and perpetuating a culture of intellectual laziness. The political arena, once a space for reasoned debate and the pursuit of the common good, has descended into a spectacle of theatrics, soundbites, and personality cults. The rise of populism, fueled by economic anxieties and social divisions, has ushered in an era of demagoguery, where emotional appeals and simplistic solutions trump nuanced policy discussions. Politicians, more concerned with winning elections than serving the public good, often resort to divisive rhetoric, fear-mongering and outright falsehoods to manipulate public opinion. The focus on short-term gains and the pursuit of power at all costs have created a political system characterized by gridlock, inaction, and a profound disconnect between the governed and the governing. This decline in political discourse has far-reaching consequences. It erodes public trust in democratic institutions, fuels cynicism and apathy, and creates a breeding ground for extremism. When rational debate is replaced by emotional appeals, when complex issues are reduced to simplistic slogans, and when truth becomes a casualty of political expediency, the very foundations of a healthy democracy are threatened. Section 5. The erosion of trust. A case study. The erosion of trust is perhaps the most insidious consequence of the decline in intellectual standards and integrity. This erosion is evident across all sectors of society, from business and finance to healthcare and education. To illustrate this point, let's examine a specific case study: the 2008 financial crisis. The crisis was triggered by a complex interplay of factors, including deregulation, subprime lending, and the proliferation of complex financial instruments. However, at its core, the crisis was a failure of integrity. Financial institutions, driven by greed and a culture of reckless risk-taking, engaged in practices that were not only unethical, but ultimately unsustainable. They prioritized short-term profits over long-term stability, sacrificing the well-being of their clients and the broader economy in the process. The consequences of this failure were devastating. Millions lost their homes, their savings, and their livelihoods. The global economy was plunged into a deep recession, the effects of which are still being felt today. The crisis exposed the fragility of a system built on trust and the profound consequences of its erosion. It served as a stark reminder of the importance of integrity, accountability, and ethical leadership in all sectors of society. Section 6. The price of stupidity. The consequences of intellectual decline are not merely theoretical or abstract. They have real-world implications that affect us all. The price of stupidity is a steep one, paid in the currency of economic instability, social unrest, and environmental degradation. When societies fail to prioritize knowledge, critical thinking, and sound judgment, they become vulnerable to manipulation, prone to making poor decisions, and ill-equipped to address the complex challenges of the 21st century. Consider, for instance, the growing threat of climate change. This existential crisis demands a collective response rooted in scientific understanding, rational policy-making, and a willingness to embrace uncomfortable truths. Yet, the forces of intellectual decline, fueled by misinformation, denialism, and a preference for simplistic solutions, impede our ability to address this challenge effectively. The same can be said for other pressing issues such as income inequality, political polarization, and the rise of extremist ideologies. These complex problems require nuanced understanding, critical analysis, and a commitment to evidence-based solutions. However, the prevailing culture of intellectual laziness, the aversion to grappling with complexity, and the erosion of trust in experts and institutions hinder our ability to make progress on these fronts. In the face of these challenges, the need for integrity has never been more urgent. Integrity, in its broadest sense, encompasses intellectual honesty, ethical conduct, and a commitment to truth and accountability. It is the bedrock of a functioning society, the foundation upon which trust is built, and the essential ingredient for effective leadership. Integrity demands a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, to challenge our own biases, and to prioritize the common good over personal gain. It requires a commitment to evidence-based reasoning, a respect for diverse perspectives, and a willingness to engage in civil discourse even when disagreements arise. In a world awash in misinformation, where truth is often subjective and facts are malleable, integrity serves as a compass, guiding us towards sound judgment and ethical action. It is the antidote to the cynicism and apathy that threaten to engulf our societies. It is the key to rebuilding trust, restoring faith in institutions, and creating a more just and equitable world. The task of reversing the tide of intellectual decline and restoring integrity to our institutions and our public discourse is a daunting one. It requires a multi-pronged approach, a collective effort that encompasses education reform, media literacy, political accountability, and a renewed emphasis on ethical leadership. We must begin by reclaiming our educational systems, shifting the focus from rote learning and standardized tests to critical thinking, problem solving, and a genuine love of learning. We must empower students to become discerning consumers of information, to think critically about the world around them, and to develop the skills necessary to navigate the complexities of the digital age. We must also address the challenges posed by the modern media landscape. This requires promoting media literacy, encouraging critical engagement with information sources, and fostering a healthy skepticism towards sensationalized news and manipulative content. It also necessitates supporting independent journalism, holding media outlets accountable for their reporting, and creating spaces for diverse voices and perspectives. Restoring integrity to our political systems requires a renewed emphasis on ethical leadership, transparency, and accountability. We must demand more from our elected officials, holding them to a higher standard of conduct and expecting them to prioritize the common good over partisan interests. This also entails reforming campaign finance laws, reducing the influence of special interests, and creating a more level playing field for candidates who prioritize integrity and public service over personal gain. It requires fostering a political culture that values reasoned debate, evidence-based policymaking, and a willingness to compromise for the greater good. Finally, we must cultivate a broader cultural shift, one that values intellectual honesty, ethical conduct, and a commitment to truth and accountability in all aspects of life. This requires promoting critical thinking skills, encouraging open-mindedness, and a willingness to engage with diverse perspectives, and fostering a sense of shared responsibility for the well-being of our communities and our planet. The age of stupidity is not an inevitability, it is a choice. We can choose to continue down this path of intellectual decline, embracing superficiality, succumbing to misinformation, and relinquishing our capacity for critical thinking and sound judgment. Or we can choose a different path, one that embraces knowledge, integrity, and wisdom as guiding principles for our individual lives and our collective future. The task before us is not easy. It requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But the stakes are too high to ignore. The future of our civilization hinges on our ability to reclaim our minds, restore integrity to our institutions, and build a society that values truth, reason, and the pursuit of knowledge. Let this essay serve as a clarion call, a rallying cry for all who believe in the power of wisdom to shape a brighter future. The time to act is now.